least now that I'd started investing in ABS, I didn't have to worry about whether or not I was going to. As I devoted myself to my daily work routine, I gradually managed to sort out my thoughts towards ABS, which was why when that particular day came about a month after my meal with Eagle, I was at least somewhat ready for it. At the end of a workday, when the market had closed safely without anything unusually happening, Dr. Wallace showed up at our office. "How are you doing?" Wallace, leaning on his cane, went to sit down as he said that. Since we didn't have any fancy reception space, his chair was just a spare office chair. "The market is as merry as usual. Even more than usual, I might say." "I don't need tea or anything, thank you." Wallace said that to Marco, who was rummaging around the cupboards in search of something. "This will be a pretty straightforward matter." And then he looked at me. "I'm sure you heard the rumors about my fund." In the business world, heaven and hell were often separated only by one thin office wall. Our funds are more than abundant, so even if we were sometimes criticized for being nonchalant, we still made steady profits. We had a good relationship with our clients. In contrast, Wallace's face, which was already emaciated because of his old age, had gotten even bonier, making him look like a revenant. "I've heard about the bad ones, yes." "Bad rumors always come from loss of profits, but in this world not all losses are bad. I've heard that you were keeping your clients in the dark about your activities." Funds like that also existed. However, at least as far as I knew, that wasn't Wallace's stance. Which is why, when I heard even more of these rumors after my dinner with Eagle, I couldn't believe them. "It's true," Wallace then said. As I kept my eyes locked on Wallace, I considered a certain possibility. A decline in cognitive functions caused by old age. There were investors who became ignorant of reality and obstinate as they got older. Despite their shining past as brave warriors in the market, past achievements couldn't hold back senility. There were ways to hedge the decline of stocks, but there were no methods to hedge the passage of time. I don't think this is a good strategy. I wonder. Wallace merely replied. It might be better not to offend him. While I was trying to choose my words carefully, Wallace continued. But I'm aware of my own weakness. Which means this is probably going to be my last battle. Or rather, for anyone with a keen perception, this will probably be the greatest and last battle ever. People say my head's full of sand, that my brain's like a dried out sponge, but I know better than anyone else what I'm doing. I'm not like the young cattle who think they have all the time and chances in the world. This is the only chance I have left. I absolutely will not let anyone get in my way, come hell or high water. For a moment, I was about to send Marco to fetch Maria. In truth, he seemed about ready to do so on his own. However, I gestured to Marco to wait, and I replied to Wallace. "So you're not becoming stubborn, just making investments, is that it?" "Yes, I'm not anticipating my slow death, but rather my final success." Sometimes, even the king of pessimism wasn't afraid to use hyperbole. On the bright side, that meant that even if Wallace was perturbed, at least he was not ignoring reality. What kind of investments was he making anyway? Are you not short-selling the usual way? I thought it was impossible, but asked just to be sure. I could somewhat brag that there was no way I would notice if Wallace were to get so stubborn that he would wager all the investments from his fund on a single thing. I was confident about my ability to see anomalies on the stock market, especially when they were swimming against the current. I could visually list countless fraudulent companies capable of short-selling. None of them was anywhere close to Avalon in terms of scale, though. Now that Avalon had been overcome, only Emerald Industries remained. Wallace stared at me with a tormented expression. It was different from the cattle blabbering loudly about their get-rich-quick schemes. That was the obstinacy of a child new to the market who just found out its secret and was keeping it to himself, intending to earn a huge profit on his own. But looking at him transported me back in my mind to 8 years ago when I really believed I could get rich enough to take over the world using just my laptop. I was particularly obstinate at that time. I used to stick to my convictions no matter what. Without those principles, my ego wouldn't have held up. It must have been the same for Wallace. And my obstinacy from 8 years was probably no match for his. After all, without the strength of heart to see one's decision through all the way, he wouldn't would be fit to do things like short selling. Despite all that, Wallace had come here. This was a desperate situation that was more than about idealism. Yeah, this should be a little bit better worded. You couldn't bet on the rise and fall of prices on the stock market just by reading the newspaper. That was because people were betting their money, basically a fragment or even the entirety of their life, that investments could be made. I'm using negative carry. It seemed that Eagle's information was correct. Aside from the mathematical expected value, negative carry and positive carry were definitely not the same, psychologically speaking. Why? Imagine days spent studying frantically for an exam versus days spent lazing around eating junk food. Most of us have probably been through something like that. Are you trading options? No. Are you short-selling claims? No. Then is it it? Enough guessing, I refuse to say what it is. Wallace said that categorically, then he added, however, I would like funds. I need funds to continue my investments. Are you aware of how preposterous that sounds? I am. But I am worried about this investment becoming too well known. If that happens, it will be too late. I need a lot more funds. Funds are crucial. I'm waiting for returns big enough to turn the world upside down. Wallace's face looked ghastly as he told me this. Marco, unable to look at him, was about to go get Maria, but Wallace stood up from his chair and said, I will yield 25% of the right to my fund. In exchange, I would like you to provide me with 100 million mules. That's absurd. I was nearly about to say absurd, but I stopped. 25% of that fund, which is on the verge of sinking and being abandoned by its investors one after another, was worth 100 million mules. So basically that meant that Wallace's fund was worth 400 million mules. There was a limit to how much you could ask for such a meager amount. Even if we were to put together all the funds Wallace had on hand, it probably wouldn't amount to that much. Moreover, if his investments were to fail, we'd only be able to afford a quarter of the plate on his door that said Wallace Capital Management. In the worst case, Wallace's investors might even sue us for the loss of money sustained, seeing as we'd be his partners in this. We would have no assets to seize. In our business, there was absolutely nothing but trust. However, what made me shiver where I sat was the serious expression on Wallace's face. That wasn't the face of someone making a fair trade, but rather of someone convinced that this was all the result of a tremendous compromise. Was it madness? Or was it just the king of pessimism in all his splendor? After all, when he had been stockpiling short-selling orders for Avalon, had society also thought he had a screw loose? What happened after that? And that was why he was the king of pessimism. I thought he didn't want anything to drink. I cannot fathom how important the returns will be. I've estimated them at over 10,000%. 10,000%, you hear me? If you multiply 100 mules by 10,000%, you could realize your dream. Wallace shouted that, frothing at the mouth. Despite that, he looked like he was on the verge of tears. He looked miserable, like no one understood what he was saying. Wallace was, without a doubt, sane. Utterly sane. But being sane wasn't the same as being rational. The profits in front of him had him so agitated he was no longer a cool-headed investor. I'm begging you. You are the only one I can depend on anymore. I then looked up at Wallace, closing my mouth. A moment of silence that seemed to last an eternity fell down on us. I shook my head. We can't take risks like that without knowing the specifics. Doctor, please calm down. I'm willing to listen. If you give me more details about your investments, I might even help you. Why can't you tell me about them? Do you think I would be inclined to do that transaction if you explained? Wallace stared at me, then nodded. It was a childlike nod. I think so. These profits will be unbelievable, so you will accept. No, anyone will accept that. This This is the offer of a lifetime. No, of the entire history of... Wallace said all that in a whisper before suddenly looking at the ceiling. No. He was fainting. Doctor! I moved behind Wallace to stop him from falling, yelling to Marco as I did so. Marco, call a doctor, and Maria too. Okay? Doctor, hold on, doctor. Battles with great sums of money involved could break anyone's spirit. Even a brute who wouldn't raise an eyebrow if his family died. Situations like these could show you how cold-hearted your decisions were. Effort, love, prayers, tenacity, or loyalty, even screams begging for mercy, none of those had any value here. But in such a complicated and unfathomable situation, only two things mattered. Number one, don't suffer any losses. Number two, never forget number one. Doctor! Maria screamed at me as she entered the room after being summoned by Marco, but the unconscious Wallace made no reply. According to his personal physician, it was a combination of overwork and malnutrition. We could at least take comfort in the fact that he hadn't had a stroke. But even Maria, who was sitting disheartened in the lounge of the hospital with a cup of hot cocoa, looked like she could collapse at any time now. So she's talking to Hal and not Marco. The doctor has been keeping me out of the loop on his deals for a while now. So he's been acting completely on his own. Yes. They said that 3 people in agreement could endure many trials. They also said if 7 people insisted something is right, even if it was clearly black, no matter how you looked at it, you might start to believe them. Based on how the human brain worked, we were really not fit to exist on our own. Wallace made it to this ripe old age as the king of pessimism partly because of his tenacity, but I'm sure Maria's presence helped too. And if he wasn't even letting her in on his deals, that meant Wallace was preparing to face death like a soldier. It was a shock to me at first too. To think he'd go so far as to distrust me, even though it's unthinkable that I'd tell anyone else about his deals. Besides, Wallace didn't like these secret deals too much, am I right? Yes. The chief was priding himself on removing the distortions in the market. He would publish the contents of his deals so much that he even ended up the target of an investigation because of the rumors circulating. By advertising rumors about stock, he was suspected of manipulating the stock prices of stocks. But the chief was a sane man. Upon hearing those words, Maria took an envelope from her bag. It was a neatly written document befitting of the Earthborn Wallace. This memorandum states that I had no knowledge whatsoever of the contents of these deals. That's... Yes. Should the deal ever fail, and should he end up sued for fraud, I wouldn't be implicated. Fraud? I actually have already been fired from that fund, forcefully, so that I wouldn't bear any responsibility. Words failed me. It did happen that an investment fund turned up immense losses. If dissolution happened due to accumulated losses, then it was quite a common occurrence for backers to scream fraud and bring about a lawsuit. Wallace was perfectly sane. It was only his investment that was in the realm of madness. What will you do from now on? I will talk with a lawyer and try to persuade the chief. Now, if it has to come to this, I will force him to cancel the deal. Then I will dissolve the fund. It was sad, but it was probably a sound decision. It looked like the chief was even betting with all his personal accounts, but I do have some savings on my own. I think I'll go back to Earth to lead a quiet life. I couldn't just say that's nice like it was nothing. I had no words for a defeated general. Besides, it might happen someday that I ended up in the same position. Seems that in the end the chief got caught by the demon of investment. Maria raised her face, smiling with dignity, but tears were falling from her eyes. Given how long she was at the side of the king of pessimism, she probably believed they would be able to pull through somehow. I couldn't nod or shake my head. I just held Maria's gaze. Well then, best to keep the wound as small as possible. As she uttered these words, she put away the document and stood up. Thank you for everything. She bowed and left the lounge. Marco, who had sensed it was best to leave the room, greeted Maria quickly at the entrance. The hot cocoa, now cooled, remained untouched. The demon of investment. What could have possessed Wallace? It must be related to ABS. However, the more I investigated, the more the whole operation ended up proving its soundness. It was true that I felt something I couldn't completely accept in the relation between risk and return, but I had bowed my knees. It was apparent at first glance just how wonderful it was. But then, what had he seen? Or if not that, what did he persuade himself into having seen? As I thought that over, it occurred to me that this was a lot like one of those ghost stories. There were tales of things that would drive you crazy the instant you saw them, not only on Earth, but among everyone working in outer space. Wallace was clearly afraid. He was abnormally scared that his secret would get leaked. He must have been convinced that there was just that much profit there. But what could he have seen? An immense amount of profit so big that they drive you crazy about it like a child, ceasing to care about appearances. It felt incredibly nostalgic to me, but along with a pang in my heart, I felt like seeing it too. What stupidity am I spouting? I realized just when it crossed my mind and shook my head hurriedly. One might learn from their failures, but that feeling just now was completely different. I felt incredibly envious of Wallace's attitude. That attitude, completely unlike that of a wooden-legged donkey, was dazzling. But I had a responsibility, a goal, beliefs. I must not let myself be swayed. As I looked at the City of Desire, Newton City, visible from the lounge, those were the words I murmured in a daze. The title deed for the ABS, sent by E.J. Rochberg, was a promise of wealth. Seeing this, the economist inside me was, as always, screaming. Holding his thick, holy scriptures in his hand, his face made me look like Dr. Wallace's. Moreover, it seemed I was really shocked by what happened to Wallace. Days later, I was still not able to concentrate on my work. As I was trying to somehow gloss over it, one day, Risa called me after the regular meeting of the Housing Aid Project. She seemed to be the only person you could not keep a secret from. From the outset, I had no intention of hiding it either, so in the church, I told Risa everything she wanted to know about Wallace. Wallace's firm was putting money into this project, but he stayed in the background, saying the presence of someone known as the King of Pessimism would cause trouble. Risa had met Maria a few times. Sounds to me like how you used to be. She said this right as I finished talking. Yeah, you might be right. And maybe that's why it affected you. I closed my eyes and breathed through my nose. That was the best way to cool my head down. But it was surely hot breath that came out. I just wondered, what lies in the distance in the direction he's gazing? Nothing. Risa said this flatly without even looking at me. You cannot let yourself be guided by dead people. That's what an exorcist would say. When you were in a similar situation 8 years ago, you prayed to God. So, where was what counted most for you? Risa was sitting in a pew in the front row. She did not even turn toward me. I looked at her from the side as I spoke. It was in my hands. Risa sighed, turned, and patted me on the head. So there you go, you get to see her face after all. I think that's probably like the closest picture of her we've had. That's right. There are moments when we can touch the hem of God's robe. However, it's very probable that it might be a temptation from the devil. Hal, you're not alone anymore. I say this because people support you. Of course, but also because you support us all. The project costs a lot. It's not something that people like us, a bunch of dreamers with nothing but big words, can handle alone. We need your help. Yes, I understand. Don't let this confuse you. I'm sorry for what happened to this Dr. Wallace guy. I'm sure he's a very talented and hardworking person, But if you're in danger of being dragged down with him, I'm prepared to stop it. Yeah, even Sasha gave me the headhunting. I made a half-hearted joke, which prompted Risa to force out a vague laugh. Her shoulders drooped. So, Hal. Yeah. I have a suggestion. A suggestion. As I was wondering what she wanted all of a sudden, Risa said this as she was just sending me back to pick some groceries. What about taking a vacation? A vacation? Yes. You've been working non-stop, haven't you? Yeah, but this is a crucial time. Risa laughed at my words as if she was embarrassed. For those who live their lives to the fullest, every moment is crucial. But what will I do if I take a vacation? Do you want me to go to space, or what? I think you could go to Earth. I took a deep breath. I understood immediately where this conversation was heading. It's Marco. Hey, don't shout, please. He did it. He should have minded his own business. As I was groaning, getting up without realizing it, Risa softly stared at me with a disappointed look. Hal, sit. When I was with Risa, I was not the elite investor, the hero of the lunar surface. I was the young Hal who had not grown up the slightest in 8 years. I couldn't stop myself from sitting down and lowering my head. However, Risa was not in any way threatening me. Her disposition was, as she spoke, a quiet one, as if she wanted to wrap me in her embrace. Hagana is probably not on the lunar surface. I looked for her myself. You probably searched everywhere too, right? Admit it. You want to go to Earth to look for her. If I said no, it would be a lie. I really looked for her literally everywhere on the lunar surface. I figured Earth was the only place left, but a series of practical problems prevented me from following up on that. I spent a whole year dealing exclusively with Avalon. Eleanor disliked attention and did not want to be on the lunar surface, so I had to handle any public matters. And while I was doing all of this, the housing aid project started, and I got really busy with my own fund, and time passed. However, when asked if I wanted to go to Earth right now and look for her, I could only shake my head no. You don't want to go look for her? No, it's... Unable to speak and feel hopeless, I looked back at Risa. I'm afraid. Afraid? You mean... No. Not in the sense of what happened 4 years ago. At that instant, I understood what Eleanor must have felt on that spaceship 4 years ago when she couldn't tell me about her cosmophobia. If I go to Earth, I'm sure I'll be at my wit's end. I had never left the lunar surface. It was 100, no, 1,000 times smaller than Earth, and the entirety of its history spanned only 20 years. What do you mean? Agoraphobia? If you don't know what that is, that's the fear of wide open spaces. The opposite of claustrophobia. Risa gazed at me in interest, then laughed scornfully. So just go and be at your wit's end. It's important to see the big picture, you know? It's... Risa stopped talking for a moment and then said, also true for your future actions. Years ago, I missed something extremely important because my view was as narrow as the point of a needle. If I could take back what I lost 4 years ago, it was because I did not lose sight of what was important. And now I was trying to move forward once again. What I needed was not a razor-sharp concentration or to flail my arms around trying to desperately grasp something relying on my leads. No. What I needed was probably the ability to look at the bigger picture without losing sight of what was important. Situations could change drastically, even in the investment world, and generation changes took place between those who took the lead and those who were left behind. The fuss made by the herd whenever something like ABS appeared was proof of that. In terms of investment, Dr. Wallace was perhaps the last true flame of our time. But I had to move forward. And for that, I had to provide a new light in order to illuminate this darkness. You don't have to be impatient. The route from here on out is quite long. I had absolutely no way to oppose Risa. Faced with her gentle smile, all I could do was nod slowly. Even though she had a video phone, she refused to use it because the picture quality was so low. Eleanor said that over the phone in a lively tone. Well then, I will meet up with you at the shuttle station on the equator. No, it's fine. How long does it take for you to get there? Mere hours. Nothing compared to the 4 years of solitude I've endured. I smiled wryly, wondering what sort of face she was making as she said that. I had a feeling the real reason she didn't do video calls was so I couldn't see how mean she looked when she said things like that. Well, joking aside, you are more than welcome to stay at our house if you come to Earth. We have plenty of rooms free. But it's a castle in the middle of a forest. Isn't it a little inconvenient for you to go out? We had a heliport added recently. Looks like there's no escape, huh? The gravity is stronger on Earth, after all. Eleanor chuckled, and I heard the ruffle of fabric on the other end of the phone. Huh. Were you sleeping? I'd made sure to look up what time it was on Earth, and I made a mistake. As I asked that in a panic, Eleanor giggled again. I just decided to lie down so I could talk for as long as I wanted. Are you drunk? Is it that obvious? Eleanor said that, accompanied by the sound of her pouring water or something into a crystal glass. It made a pleasant clink. To think that you'd call me today of all days. It's fate. Is it your birthday? If it were, that'd mean all these cards you sent me over the years were a bit off the mark, no? Okay then. Is it Le Goff's birthday? Do you really think he lets us celebrate his birthday? He's always such a piece of work in those situations. The way she said this was so funny, I couldn't help but laugh. Eleanor laughed too, and eventually our laughter trailed off. To be honest, I wasn't sure whether I ought to tell you or not. What is it? When I asked her that, I imagined Eleanor must have closed her eyes. I hadn't seen her in 4 years, but her mannerisms were still fresh in my mind. So on the other end of the line, Eleanor probably closed her eyes and sat up straighter. After that, she spoke quietly, but clearly. Today, I've met the person to whom I will eventually be betrothed. I couldn't help but gasp at the news. My surprise hadn't escaped Eleanor's hearing, of course, and she let out a small laugh. Is that so surprising? No. I hesitated a little, then said, I was just thinking how let down Marco's going to be. Oh. Eleanor seemed somewhat surprised, but also a little bit happy. Naturally, nothing has been decided yet. If anything, it's the people around me who are most excited. She talked about it like it was someone else's business. Whether out of shyness or drunkenness, I couldn't tell. But if you don't like him, you're not going to put up with him, right? I beg your pardon. I happen to have a reputation for being a well-mannered young lady. Ha ha. I forced a laugh. On the other end of the line, Eleanor was probably very annoyed. With her by my side, I'd taken out Avalon and regained all I'd lost. Back then, we'd laid all our feelings bare in front of each other, so we knew full well that neither of us knew when to quit. After a silent pause, Eleanor finally said quietly, I am just slightly anxious about this. Anxious? There's a lot at stake, after all. People of noble birth sure did have to deal with a lot of complicated things. However, I realized that this might be about something else entirely. Getting engaged or even married probably constituted a bigger life change than going back to Earth from the lunar surface. Or at least, that was what I imagined. To me, the idea of staying at the juncture of two entirely different worlds like that seemed terrifying. I pictured Eleanor as she was 4 years ago and said, if you start feeling bad, you can just raise hell and hug your knees to your chest in a bathtub like last time. Then you can work out a solution. Eleanor was silent on the other end of the phone. She might have been mad, or maybe surprised. But then I realized she was laughing. You're right. After all, doing that is what helped us get back everything we had lost. I know you must be anxious, but you've got to keep pressing forward. I felt a little hypocritical giving Eleanor that sort of advice, but she just breathed in quietly and said, Yes, you are right. I have to move forward. She said it in a small voice, sniffing a little. Thank you. You're welcome. I could just picture the look in Eleanor's eyes before she shrugged her shoulders and let out an amazed laugh. So what are you planning to do on Earth? I'm assuming it's not a sightseeing trip. Risa's told me to be at my wit's end on Earth's surface. Or, on Earth. I see. Does that mean you're finally taking a break? I'm not sure whether I'll have time to rest. Anyway, things are going to be difficult before I go. I can't even imagine what being under 6 times the gravity I'm used to will feel like. Oh yes, I'd forgotten about that. But you're young, so I'm sure you'll adapt quickly. It's been very difficult for Legoff. He just kept saying he did not want to go to a gravity training facility because he would be fine, and that we should just get going. For a while after we came back here, he just kept fainting from anemia. Good grief. I laughed at the thought of the whole thing. But you have been working constantly for the last 4 years, have you not? I do believe a rest would do you good. Well, maybe. Most of the people I introduced to you are all extremely satisfied by your investments. There are a fair number who are critical of you, though, but you are very good at speaking to them earnestly. In the face of faith, they become quite weak. That's just because I'm not good at hiding things from people. Good manners dictate that when someone gives you a compliment, you should just accept it. Yeah, but Earth words are 6 times heavier. Eleanor and I both laughed. Then after a moment I said, but my pace seems to be slowing recently. Eleanor, taken by surprise, didn't reply immediately. She took my words in, then answered slowly. You ought to follow Risa's advice. Impatience is forbidden, and even harmful. I'm not sure why, but I feel like I'm surrounded by strong women. That is because you are strong yourself, Hal. I couldn't stop myself from laughing bitterly at Eleanor's candid words. I wish you were right. So, you're coming to Earth to relax. Exactly. That was my answer, but it seemed as if Eleanor was thinking about something on the other end of the line. And she was waiting for me to notice. She might have been a little bit angry at me. In any case, I suppose I won't be needing the helicopter. It seemed I had guessed right. Relaxation comes second. Second. Eleanor's tone clearly implied that she knew I wouldn't be alone. In that case, it would be rude of me to avoid the topic. I'm going to look for someone. The one from 8 years ago? I took a small breath before answering Eleanor's straightforward question. Yes, the person I was in love with. I may have heard an "oh dear" from the receiver. After that, I heard a dull sound. Apparently Eleanor had punched or thrown a pillow or something like that. Finally, I heard a bubbling, sparkling voice, almost like a teenage girl's. Actually, there are a lot of things I wanted to ask you about that. She was the type of woman who'd get her teeth into something I'd never let go. She had been that way, even against Avalon. I'll fill you in once I get to Earth. You must tell me. Promise me you will, alright? I don't think it's that interesting a story, honestly, but I'll be the judge of that. When she said it flat out like that, all I could do was shrug. I shall be awaiting your arrival, then. I'll contact you once I'm close to my destination. Have a nice day. Eleanor sighed with that, and hung up. Signed off with that. I felt what I recognized to be the same kind of weariness I'd felt after talking with the chief executive of a prominent company on the lunar surface. It wasn't a bad feeling, though. I went into the living room to report to Risa. I've called her. Attaboy, good job. Risa had cornered me with the assumption that I wouldn't call Eleanor, so I ended up having to do that from the church. Per usual, she wouldn't mind her own business. I would probably have hated her meddling in the past, but right now it made me feel happy and safe. So, what did she say? She asked me to tell her more about Hagana. At those words, Risa smiled somewhat gleefully. The reason why I hadn't asked Eleanor about her fiancé wasn't out of concern for her privacy. If I were to admit it out loud that was because I was frustrated by the news, people would definitely point and laugh at me. But are you sure it's okay for me to not be around at such an important time? People born and raised on the lunar surface took a long time to get used to the gravity on Earth. Regardless of age, it took 1 month of acclimation at the very least, which meant I need to stay away from the lunar surface for 2 to 3 months. I wanted to take the time to really explain to Risa what this entailed, but all she'd done was retrieve the phone slowly and begun waving at me a bit. Marco is really eager to act as your substitute, you know? He's acting like everything's already been decided, little sneak. At least call it laying the groundwork like an adult. I gave up on the argument entirely. Risa rose from the couch and stretched languidly before going on. But you know, they say a title promotes a person's growth. Marco is brilliant, but you should let him experience new things. It's not like I'm doubting his skills or anything. But he's always in your shadow, isn't he? Well, I guess. If you aren't willing to entrust your work to other people, you'll never be able to go anywhere. I stared back at her with a look calculated to say, well, aren't you just full of wisdom? However, Risa merely shrugged her shoulders in reply. That's because it demonstrates how much faith you have in other people. You've had trouble doing that in the past, right? When I saw the look of purposeful triumph on her face, I sneered like a kid and shot back. I'll have you know that, given the right directions, I can work from anywhere. I wonder if I should confiscate all of your means of communication. Not knowing how serious Risa was about that, I just raised my hands in defeat. In the few days that followed, I was busy coordinating various things and handling procedures for a trip to Earth, so I couldn't go to the Schweitzer investment office. I think that was Risa's plan, maybe. Just beyond one wall, Dr. Wallace's endless dreams must have been in the middle of being dismantled. Risa said with conviction that there was nothing beyond what Wallace gazed at. It is as if she was saying, don't look at what the dead look at. That aside, and because I was sort of an investment geek, I was just wondering what Wallace was trying to do. Short-selling ABS? Claims could be traded, and based on the level of demand, their values as securities could fluctuate, and if that happened, there was an opportunity for investment. Right now, ABS and CDO were in the middle of an explosive demand increase, so if you were to compare this to stock trade right now, the stock price would be in the middle of an explosive increase. I could also trade them via an investment bank broker and reap profits from the price increase right away. But then, short-selling ABS could not be called a hemophiliac investment anymore. If you tried to sell extremely popular claims short, you would incur losses akin to getting your head cut off by a guillotine. Or the possibility also existed that he was doing complex financial transactions based on ABS and CDO. No matter what it was, as long as its price fluctuated, in theory, you could create any kind of financial product. After a lot of thinking, the night before my sudden trip to Earth, I put in an appearance at the Schweitzer investment office. Oh, hell, did you forget something? This whole thing was so sudden, even I don't know if I've forgotten anything. At my words, Marco cackled. That's Risa for you, alright? If she allowed you any time to think, you'd end up taking years. This coming from you? So, what is it? If it's about the positions, don't worry, I won't tweak them too much. No, that's not what I'm really worried about. As I fumbled for words, Marco looked at me suspiciously and said, if it's about the doctor, I have instructions from Risa. You can't. She made the first move. Risa may not know much about math, but she could tell that our profits were becoming smaller and smaller, so she's worried that you'll rack your brains and do something weird. But I wouldn't do something like that, was what I wanted to say. But I had too many precedents already. So I won't investigate Wallace's case. If I found out something, I'd speak for sure. I got it. Marco was so obstinate, I wondered what kind of reward Risa had promised him. Even Marco, who was quite learned about investment, far more so than someone of his generation normally was, must be quite interested in what depths had gotten hold of Wallace. He couldn't be indifferent to it. Since it was Risa we were talking about, she might just have laid his head on her lap and cleaned his ears or something. However, I also had a secret plan of my own. After heaving a sigh, I said this. However, I do have one or two more worries. What does that mean? I'm talking about Miss Maria. I wanted to make sure I had Marco on the back foot, then went on in a serious tone. They're like us. They didn't hire anyone else, right? As for their lawyers, they're going through a major law firm, but it's not like they're comrades they can confide in. With what happened to the doctor, Miss Maria must be enduring crushing stress. That's the only thing I... Say, hell. Marco interrupted me and I feigned surprise. That's really low. Low? It doesn't have anything to do with Wallace. I'm just worried about her as a neighbor, that's all. Marco looked at me as if he was about to cry. I'm also worried about Miss Maria. I figured. As a colleague and as someone whose office is next to ours, I guess. I spoke in a shallow, businesslike manner. Marco, who was adamant that he had not looked into Wallace's case, closed his eyes, falling a prey to anguish. But Wallace wasn't alone in that office, and if there was anyone in this world worried about Wallace, it was Maria. So it was obvious what a young boy in love would do next. And I just had to look at Marco the way I would look at a liar. Can you keep that a secret from Risa? Of course. I shrugged and said, and if you can tell me anything, try to do it sooner rather than later. Do you have surveillance cameras or something? It's a simple guess. I delivered this with my best poker face. Marco covered his eyes with his hand so vehemently that he might have been praying to God, and sat back in his chair. Risa did forbid him to do that, but he must have been trying to take the opportunity to score points by helping Maria when she was weak. If you crumble under such pressure, I don't think you'll be able to hide anything from Risa. So, what was Wallace doing? As I spoke, I pulled out a chair and sat down. Marco hung his head in shame, and likely where he wouldn't be able to hide anything now, opened his mouth reluctantly. It seems Miss Maria doesn't know. Wallace is still on a drip feed at the hospital, and it looks like he's acting like he's burned out and turned into a cripple. And so can't listen to any of Miss Maria's pleas or lawyer's legal threats. Just like him to do that. And then... Upon disassembling his PC, they found a heap of statistics data about residential loans and credit card loans. So, he really was after ABS. It doesn't look like it. It's like he made simulations of what would happen if he sold ABS short. But if that's what he'd been doing, then the losses should have already driven him into the ground so far it would breach Earth's mantle. That also fit with what I was thinking. Just what in blazes was the King of Pessimism doing? Who did he do these deals with? That should allow us to hazard a guess as to what he did. In my words, Marco's expression turned to one of regret. That is, after analyzing his connection history, emails, and stuff, we found out he was actively conversing with Harold Brothers as of late. Harold Brothers? Isn't that the bank he hates the most? Yes. Miss Maria was also wondering about that. In this field, they're called the Eternal Number 2, after all. According to him, they have no integrity. No integrity. As I repeated the phrase, Marco finally laughed. They probably want to surpass Platinum Smith and claim the title of biggest major bank. There are even some crazy rumors that the CEO of Harold Brothers has an enlarged CG picture hanging in his room with the Platinum Smith offices collapsing. Harold is that place where the whole company is making some pretty bold moves, right? Then, the returns are quite impressive. This would be the opposite stance to that of the King of Pessimism. You didn't manage to hear anything about it. Hear anything from his broker at Harold Brothers. That is, he won't even speak to me. It seems like Wallace had accumulated impressive positions, and they don't want to liquidate them. Besides, if it's negative carry we're talking about, his losses every month mean profit for them every month. It really feels like they're all equally bad. Apparently, Wallace fired not only Miss Maria, but also his attorney. In other words, Wallace Capital's management employees consist solely of Dr. Wallace himself. That way, even if Miss Maria is close to him, she has no obligation to provide any information to the investment bank. For her to do that, she would need written authorization from him. He was really well prepared, but couldn't his backers claim there was a possibility of fraud and force her to? The people with the guts and funds to do that hightailed it a while back. The only ones left now would be his hardcore followers and investors from whom pulling out would mean risking too much of a loss. Seems that a lot of people replied in anger to Miss Maria's requests, demanding to know whether she had trusted in the doctor's investments and such. By the looks of it, Dr. Wallace was completely sane. His preparations were too perfect. He must resolve to bed down to his last drop of blood with no concern for how much he lost. That's why things are in a deadlock now. Since things are like that, actually, Miss Maria wanted to... Marco looked at me with pleading eyes as he spoke. More than that, his gaze had changed completely from before. Now he looked like a dog that had just been scolded by its master. What? Actually, she said she wanted to ask you for advice. Then he glanced sullenly to the side. I was kind of taken aback and could only scratch my head. If you thought about it normally, there were very few people on the lunar surface capable of tracing what Dr. Wallace would do. Fewer still if we were talking about people who were on good terms with him and that he could trust. That was probably why Maria had said that, but Marco's affection for her may have blinded him to that. I heaved a sigh before answering. But I'm heading for Earth tomorrow. That's right, so why not just enjoy your trip? Marco went full kid, acting more his age when he said that. I couldn't help but laugh. When I caught my breath, I answered, Aren't you forgetting something important? Marco looked at me suspiciously and I shrugged before speaking. I trusted you to act as a proxy for me, right? But that's... You could just act proud and be like, leave everything to me. I'm the right-hand man of Lunar Surface's hero. Got a problem with that? Something like that. You've got to be at least that shameless, or do you think you'll be able to manage fights or investment for the next few months like that? I might well have woken him up by dumping cold water on his face. Marco blinked with surprise, and he smiled in a weary, put-upon way before he spoke again. You're not the one taking risks, so it's easy for you, Hal. But I'm not the one who gains the returns either. At those words, he groaned, looking up to the ceiling.